Hi, everybody. Welcome to Stratosphere Studio. I'm your host, Bill Whittle, and it is the 21st of August, 2023, which seems like it shouldn't be that far into the future just yet. I don't have a lot of updates on the Major Mathematic League to show. I have some things to talk about, but I do have some genuinely cool news. Sorry. And here it is. On the Stratosphere Lounge on Tuesday, I talked about in some detail about doing this entirely new set of shows, an interview show, and the kind of the meta behind it is that I'm just convinced that the overall main strategy of what's going on, bad guy strategy of what's going on in the world today, is to make us all nuts, basically. Just completely wear us down. I came to the conclusion that they know that they can't beat us unless we surrender, and I think they're just trying to get us to walk away. Just walk away from everything. So after, so many years, especially since 2020, of just wading into this thing and every day just having new nightmares, about what's going on, I realized no, it's working. They're discouraging everybody, and they're getting people to think, oh, you know what, it's too late. The country's gone, electoral system's gone, all this other stuff. So once I realized, I got to the point where I began to see that as a pretty clear strategy. I just said to myself, I'm just not going to play that game with them anymore. I'm going to do something that is optimistic, uplifting, fun, cheerful even, and something that's not divisive. You're never going to see me making peace with the people that are orchestrating the destruction of this country, but I am going to try to make peace with the people who are victims of it. So that means a new channel, because I don't want to put these interviews that I'm going to be doing next to me coming out with red meat support of President Trump, which I will continue to do. But I want people to get to come for the celebrities and stick around for the conservative wisdom. So that was the plan. For those of you that missed the Stratosphere Lounge show, I talked about doing an interview show. I was thinking about calling it Life Lessons, but Natasha told me that was a little bit lectury, so I think I'll probably call it In the Moment. But the idea was that I would interview celebrities, real, major celebrities, about specific aspects of what they did in certain movies to try to get a handle on why it is that some movies connect with us on such a deep level, and how and what kind of alchemy do they bring to the mix. For example, there were scores of, well, not scores, but probably close to 10 movies, major movies, about the Vietnam War and about veterans in the Vietnam War. So why did Lieutenant Dan light up the veterans the way he did when none of these other people did? I want to talk to Gary Sinise about that and figure out what it was that he put in there. So it's not just an entertainment show. It's a show that talks about the entertainment business, the storytelling business mostly. And it's not just a pop culture show. It's about what is that element of goodness that makes us come out of a movie feeling better than we did when we went in. That's where I'm going with this. So, and Field of Dreams, great. Dave Big Booty says Field of Dreams saw a reaction video. The ending had the reviewer bawling like a baby. Yes, it did make you cry. If you're not crying at the end of Field of Dreams, there's something wrong with you. Same for It's a Wonderful Life. Same for Forrest Gump. Natasha and I saw it. She hadn't seen it. We neither of us seen it for 25, 30 years. And there are elements of Apollo 13 as well, just as a number of things. So anyway, I'd had this idea about doing this kind of in-depth interview and talking with actors, mostly actors, about how they create this magic. So then it was a question of, well, can I get him to do it or not? So I sent out 4 emails. The first one I got, these are the people that I know the closest. I figured might as well try with the people who you're closest to, and if you're making some kind of mistake with the pitch or something, better to find out from people who will tell you out front. So I sent out four emails and I got 4 responses. The first response I got was from Tom Dreesen, who's probably the least well-known of the 4. But Tom Dreesen is a stand-up comic. Tom Dreesen has guest hosted The Tonight Show. Tom Dreesen opened for Frank Sinatra, who you may have heard of. And Tom Dreesen, aside from being the best joke teller I've ever heard, is also half of the first black and white comedian team. Make sure I get this right. Yep. Hang on. Yes, so Tom Dreesen was partners with Tim Reed, who you may remember as Venus Flytrap from WKRP in Cincinnati. And I've had long talks with Tom about that, and I wanted to talk to Tom about how does joke work. I know how they work. I think I know how they work, but I want to hear how he feels about that. Because Tom is a joke teller. He's not a hey, I got on a plane and boy, what about that airline food? He's not that kind of guy. He's just the best joke teller I've ever heard. And I want to talk to him about that, and I want to talk to him about how race relations have changed for the worse in the last 20 years in this country and so on. So I sent an email to Tom and asked him if he'd do it. He said he'd love to, so that's 1 out of 4. The next person I heard back from was Adam Baldwin, and I'd asked him if he would come in and be willing to talk about the tough guy, not the villain and not the heavy, the tough guy. There's a difference between that and a villain. Comes time to talk to the villain, I'll probably give Robert Davi a call. But the 2 tough guys I'm talking about are Jane Cobb from Firefly Serenity and Animal Mother from Full Metal Jacket. And we talked on the phone for a bit, and I said, why do you the kind of thing I'd like to talk to you about, Adam, is you look at either one of those 2 characters on paper, and there's nothing to like about them, but you do. What is it about Animal Mother that he did when he was just a kid, just essentially his first role, Stanley Kubrick? What is it about him do you think that people liked? He said he takes action, he's a man. I said, yeah, that's pretty much what I thought too. When I asked myself the question before I asked you the question, I said, I think people like him in the movie, respect him in the movie, even though he's kind of a lunatic. I said, I think people like and admire him because he's in Vietnam to kill gooks. That's why he's there. He's not there to make ironic comments. He's not there to hide behind rocks. He's there to go out and kill the enemy, and he makes no bones about it. He's not apologetic for it. He's not sorry about it, and he's not a coward. And Adam just started going off on the failure of leadership in the country and how they're leading from behind. So I said, would you mind repeating all this stuff on camera? He said, I'd love to. So that's 2 out of 4. The third person I contacted was, or rather that got back to me when I sent out these 4 emails, was Gary Sinise. And I know Gary of the 4 closest, I would say. And my pitch to him was, as I mentioned earlier, Lieutenant Dan transcended the movie frame and changed the world. And it changed Gary Sinise. For 30 years now, he's been touring with the Lieutenant Dan band, and I think thousands of veterans. I think he saved the lives of thousands of veterans, thousands. And I said, I don't want to talk to you about what veterans do to thank you, because I've seen those videos, and I don't want to talk about the effect that Lieutenant Dan has had on you, because I've seen those too. Oh my goodness gracious. Oh my goodness. Well, that's going in the history books. Hang on a second. I'll get my glasses. Somebody just won the internet. Taras Shev... Sorry, excuse me. Taras Shevchenko. Taras Shevchenko in the YouTube screen said that Adam was the one Baldwin who knows trigger discipline. Oh, you got to let that one sit in for a second. That is, you win the internet today, sir. What I said to Gary was, I want to know how you constructed Lieutenant Dan and how did you bring him back from the, I know the script brings him back from the dead, but what did you do? So I think there's two turning points in that movie, in Forrest Gump. I think there's an obvious one, and I think there's a not so obvious one. I think the obvious one in terms of Lieutenant Dan is when he's up on top of the mast and the storm is raging and he's, daring God, come on, you son of a bitch, is this the best you got? I'm here, come and take me. That's his death wish, and after that, he didn't have it. But I think from a story point of view, I didn't talk to Gary about this, I'm saving it, if I could get him to do it. But looking at Forrest Gump again recently, I said from a story point of view, Lieutenant Dan becomes a likable character at one of his most low pointed moments. For those of you who remember the movie, he's by now he's lost his legs. He catches up with Gump in New York City. They spend Christmas and New Year's together. Lieutenant Dan hires a couple of hookers, and he looks like he's having about as much fun as he could possibly have, being this self-hating cripple. He's on government subsidy, so this is basically, he spent a lot of money on these two hookers. And they're starting to party down, and one of them goes over to Forrest Gump and starts, trying to neck with him, and he doesn't want anything to do with it because of his Jenny. And she says, "What's the matter with you? Are you stupid or something?" And then Lieutenant Dan just loses his Shinola. "Don't you call him stupid." Well, yeah, and he gets in the argument with these two girls, and he just throws them out of the room. And that's the first time he's ever shown anything. The first couple intersections with Gump, he's just indifferent. But after Forrest saves his life, he just hates him. He feels like Forrest Gump robbed him of his Medal of Honor and his honorable death. So when he says, "Don't call him stupid," and throws away this carnal pleasure, that's the first moment that Lieutenant Dan shows you that there is somebody in there worth saving. And I want to talk to Gary about how all that stuff works. And so I asked him if he would do it. And he said, "Bill, I'd do anything for you. Absolutely, I'll do it." So that's 3 out of 4. And then, I never thanked you for saving my life, Dave Big Booty says. That moment is transcendent. And then when he appears at the very end of the movie, he looks like he's newly made. He looks like he was, like Lieutenant Dan was created by God that morning. He just looks so clean. So there's a lot of things about that I want to talk to him about. I want to talk to him a little bit about Apollo 13 too. I watched that again because I was hoping I could get Gary to do it. And the one thing I realized about watching Apollo 13, which we watched last night, Natasha and I, is that they couldn't make that movie today as they made it, because that movie, Mission Control in that movie is nothing but a bunch of white 50-year-old males sitting around solving problems. In the words of Stockton Rush. I guarantee you that if you tried to make Apollo 13 today, they would insist upon a more diverse mission control. I guarantee it. That I just don't think you get away with it today. But I want to talk about that too. It's like this is the ode to young middle-aged white guys. This is what they did, and they're trying to take that away. And I'm definitely not in favor of that. That's probably the main reason why I never really watched a frame of For All Mankind. I just looked at what they did with the casting, and I just don't believe it. So I'm old-fashioned like that. David Booty said, Ron Howard probably wouldn't hire his brother anymore. I saw Clint Howard not too long ago. I had a little talk with him. He's great in that movie. He was great in that movie. He was great in Gentle Ben too. So Gary is Gene CP Tone says Gene Kranz would be played by Jesse Smollett. Exactly. One of my favorite lines on the entire world is in that movie, and it's Tom Hanks's line, and he says, he's plotting out the moon. He says, no, it's not a miracle. We just decided to go. So that was 3 out of 4, and then I didn't hear from the fourth person until this afternoon. It had been about almost 4 or 5 days, and I thought, I don't know. He's notoriously late with emails, somebody told me. But after waiting for 5 or 6 days, I guess, for a reply, this afternoon I got a very quick email from John Voight, and he said, hey, Bill, so good to see your name in the inbox. Here's my number, give me a call. So I gave him a call, and I said, what do you think? And he said, well, I don't know. I don't usually talk about these things and how I go about doing it. And I said, why? He says, well, nobody's ever asked me before. I said, I find that practically impossible to believe, John. I said, no one's ever really seemed to be too concerned about how I do what I do. They talk about what I do, but they're not really, no one's ever asked me how I do what I do, and I don't know if I want to talk about it because it's pretty personal. I said, well, there's entire generations now out there of young men who don't know how to be men, and I believe that if you told us the mental steps that you went to create Joe Buck or characters in The Champ or Deliverance, I think people would not only be very interested in that, I think they'd find it very, very useful. And then he said, okay. I mean, he's actually kind of shy about it. He said, yeah, okay. No, I mean, let me just think about it for a couple of days, but yeah, I think we'll go for it. So that's 4 out of 4, and that's really, really cool. Now, I'm a little bit reluctant to do this because it is, I don't imagine that they're doing, that any of those guys are watching this. And so if those of you out there who are friends with these guys say anything, I know it's going to come, I know where this leak came from. But I'm going to talk about it anyway because it really does need to be a surprise. It's really, really, really important that this is a surprise. But I thought I would like to get these guys a present from the membership at BillWhittle.com, and I'd like to give them the present on the air at the end of the show. And I had 2 ideas right off the bat, one for John and one for Gary. If this gets out, I just don't think it will. So I'm saying it because this is part of a membership drive pitch. I spent 8 or 9 hours on the web looking for the exact wheelchair that Lieutenant Dan has in Forrest Gump, and it can't be close. It can't be kind of like, because that's just a Halloween costume. It had to be the exact same wheelchair, not the actual prop, but it had to be the same model, the same everything. I spent 8 or 9 hours. I found a prop house in Los Angeles that has that wheelchair, and I wrote them and said, we're doing something for Gary Sinise, and would you sell it? And then I did 8 or 9 hours of research waiting for them to get back to me because it was over the weekend. And then the guy from the rental house got back to me. He said, no, we can't sell it. I'm sorry, we use it a lot. But it's a he gave me the name and the brand number. And after looking for something for 8 hours, getting close, I thought it was an Everest and Jennings Traveler. looking at trying to get this thing down. But he gave me the name and the model number. So I went looking for the name and the model number, and I found his wheelchair. It's the exact wheelchair. The seat in the back are green, but I can stain that or dye it. I'll talk to somebody who knows vinyl. And more importantly, I got the bumper sticker that he has on the right side of that wheelchair, which says, "America, we like it here." And that bumper sticker is what sells it. So I'm going to interview Gary Sinise, and after we talk for 45 minutes or so and get to what it is that he brings to this that made so many veterans and changed so many lives, he's basically been helping veterans for 35 years now as a result of this movie. And I want to get him that wheelchair, and I want it to be, he spent a lot of time in that chair. It's got to be the chair. It can't be close. It's got to be the chair. I found it. And I want to present it to him on air. I want to see his face, and I want to say this is a gift from the members at BillWhittle.com to thank you for the work that you've done for all of us, not just for the veterans, for all of us, making us feel as good as you have. And I want you to put that, you can keep it in the Gary Sinise Foundation, which is a museum, or you can keep it at home, but wherever you keep it, Gary, I want you to keep it. And when you look at it, I don't want you to think about all the people that are in the wheelchair. It's an empty wheelchair. I want you to think about all the people you got out of wheelchairs, that actually you got out of in the real world, the thousands of men that you got out of wheelchairs just because of your talent and what you brought to it. I saw it. I had to order it, and as I mentioned on the Stress Free Lounge Show, money's pretty tight here, but this is the thing I had to do. And then the other thing I think is equally cool. For John, he spends all of Midnight Cowboy with a transistor radio, just a cheap AM/FM transistor radio. They probably bought one at the hardware store or something. And that is a 1969 Zenith Royal 44. And there are two of them extant in the world. And I talked to the guy, and he said, yeah, okay, I'll sell it to you. So at the end of the interview with John Voight, I'm going to hold up the radio, not something kind of like the radio, same color, same handle, that radio. And I think that's going to really have a profound effect on him. I'm going to, I was thinking about Adam Baldwin, and I thought probably the thing to get Adam Baldwin to get the best replica M60 machine gun that we could find. You know, you can get plastic ones and you can get resin ones, but I mean, there's a couple people that sell non-firing replicas of the M60, and about $1,000, I think, for that. And I think that would be, I mean, how can Adam Baldwin not have his own M60 in the house? I don't see how that works. So when I talked about this on Thursday, I mentioned that we are actively looking for donations to kind of help get us from here to there. So just give me 1 second here, and I'll put that link back up. For those of you who are able to contribute, the YouTube stream, of course, went out the second I started talking about that. And that was rather bad timing, but let me just grab this real quick. So anyway, 4 out of 4. And what I thought I'd do is talk a little bit with you guys about, you know, some of the names we have coming up. So let me just grab this link. If you're able to help, great. I'll tell you in just 1 second here how this whole thing's going to work. in terms of participation. So I'm going to put it in Twitch if somebody can grab it and put it in YouTube. So that's the donate link. And I'm going to put the member link on there too. And I'll tell you why, because this is actually, actually starting to actually sound like somebody who knows what they're doing from a business point of view. So give me 1 second. I drop this in here and then I'll tell you how this is all going to work. Okay, so there you go. So if you can do either, we would really appreciate it. And we will, and when we do those kind of things, give those kind of gifts to those guys, then it'll be in your name as well. I thought about the Vietnam helmet. Maybe I'll get that as well. The M60 is a thing. In fact, it's interesting. Eric Blake said to get him the helmet, and I thought yes, and I can get him the helmet, and I can get the helmet, and I can get the cover, but I'd have to get somebody who's an artist to draw what was written on the top of his helmet. I had it yesterday. It's got to be perfect. It has to be perfect. If it's not perfect, it's like I said, it's just, nothing. Okay, so here's how this is going to work, gang, for those of you out there who are listening now and our regulars have been here forever. Anything you can do with the donation to help us get some of these things under the way would be great, and we could certainly use a little help right now because the situation is extremely precarious. I think it's going to be much less precarious once we start this. And I have to interrupt myself because Eric Blake said I carried an M16 and you carried that guitar. That's one of the people I want to get, actually. His name is Mark Metcalf. He's available on Cameo, and we could probably get him for $400. So I'd like to talk to him about that because I think it's one of the great monologues of all time. So here's how it's going to work. I'm probably going to record 45 minutes to an hour with these guys. My previous job, before I started doing video commentary at PJTV in 2008, I was an editor in Hollywood. I did a bunch of Discovery Channel and History Channel documentaries back when they were about discovering and history. But then I did 164 episodes of Sunday Morning Shootout with Peter Bart and Peter Goober, where I would take I Am Become Death. That's what he had. Thank you, Steve. And I would take, 45 minutes of Tom Cruise talking to Peter Bart and Peter Goober, and I would get it down to 23 minutes, 30 seconds to the frame to deliver to the network, to the frame, to the 30th of a second. So I know how to cut interviews together. Now, I did an interview show at BillWhittle.com several years ago called After Hours. It had really groovy, graphics opening, and I sat in front of the TV screen. I had like looped cars of LA in the background. It looked really professional. And I've come to realize that that's not what people want. We're just going to be doing this. This is going to be me. Webcam is going to be on them. But I did have one more of these ideas that I like a lot because I get so many comments about this dude here, this chap. So I've also decided and started to put together the work needed to do this. I've decided that whenever I do an interview, I'm going to have a life-size cutout of an iconic character from that person standing behind me. So I'll have one of Joe Buck. I'll have one of Lieutenant Dan. I'll have one of Animal Mother. And every time I do one, that person's going to be right behind me in the frame here. Something, like that. And then every show will move everybody else back. So eventually we'll have this whole back of this frame populated by actual celebrities that have actually been on the show. So here's how it will work out. I'm gonna cut together. We're gonna do one a week. That's the target. I don't think that'll be a problem. I will edit down the best cut of that interview. I'll take out all the air. I may occasionally rearrange things. I don't usually do that, but I'll take out the air and just get it so it's tight, 20, 25 minutes, something like that. And then, in order to see that, you have to be a member of BillWhittle.com. I will take from that interview, however, at least 3 and maybe 5 interchanges, interactions. Here's a 20-second soundbite from Gary. Here's a 60-second exchange between me and Adam on something. And I'm going to put those out for free on YouTube, and I'm going to say to see the whole interview, become a member at BillWhittle.com. So members will get to see the finished interview. Our base membership is $9.95 a month, and that'll be available to members and not available to anybody else. Imagine that after all these years of the members who've just, continued to pay for things that they don't have to pay for so that we can continue to do them. It'll be nice to be able to say thank you for your perpetual support. This is for you. And so that's how that'll go. We have a second level of membership for those that can. That's $19.95 a month. That's just it's like 2 memberships. It's extra revenue for us. Those people at that second level of membership will get to see the raw footage. They'll get to see the footage from the moment we start recording to the moment we end recording. They'll get to see the, hey, how's it going, John? Oh, good to see you. Okay, have a good time, all that other stuff. So they'll get to see probably twice as much total content. Now, it won't be as slick as the edited version, but for those of you that like the kind of details, then that'll be fun. And then finally, we have a producing level membership for $49.95 a month, and a number of people have been paying that for a while too. So for those people, they get not only the edited show, and they get the whole raw footage from start to finish. For those members, they are going to be able to ask questions of these celebrities. I can't guarantee that I'll take all of them, but I'll take at least one per episode. And they will be the ones that will be able to ask a question, and I'll ask the question in their name if they want it to be asked. So I'll do at least one of those. And I think that really will change things here. I certainly expect that it will. It's getting from here to there that's the problem, frankly. We're really just hanging on. But the good news with this is it can happen quickly. I'm hoping to be shooting the first of these episodes before August is out, and certainly by the first couple days in September. I think I'll probably do John first, then Gary. And now that I've gotten the 4 out of 4 response, I'm going to be sending out a second round of emails, probably tomorrow. People I'm going to be contacting are Mike Rowe, possibly James Woods, where did I have this? Somewhere here. Hang on a second. Robert Davi. Let me find that list. Kelly Carlson. Yes, Kelly Carlson. That'll be fun. And it won't just be entertainment people, by the way. I want to do Bert Rutan, depending on how things go with, I don't want to speak for Kelly or anything, but she ended up marrying a guy who she hired for her security, who was an active member of a SEAL team. He's one of the greatest guys ever. If he's able to talk, I'd love to talk to an actual member of the, this guy's not like, the PR spokesman for the SEALs. He jumps out of airplanes, or at least jumped out of airplanes 2 times a night back in the day. And I'd love to talk to him about that too. So let me just find this little list. First of all, let me find the ones I wrote down immediately. So hang on one second. And I'm just love to get the feedback on this kind of in real time, what you guys think about these names. If there's one or two that really stand out for you, I'll just read them. So let's see what we got here. Actually, Andrew Clavin, Jeremy Boring. Kevin Sorbo I know really well. Dave Zucker I know really well. He'd be a lot of fun too. Dave Zucker from the Airplane movies. He's just fully hilarious. We got Tom Dreesen. I haven't talked to Bert yet, but I'm sure we'll get him. After we do a couple of these interviews, if I have the Gary, the John interviews, in the can, done. Tom Dreesen is very close friends with a guy named Clint Eastwood, and that's not out of the question. I'm not saying it's likely. I'm not even saying it's probable, but it's possible because Clint is a fan. Can you imagine that? I can't, but there it is. And I'd like to talk to Greg Gutfeld. I'd like to talk to John Ratzenberger. I'm trying to do this to sell BillWhittle.com memberships. One person that came into the group that Gary formed at the end of it, who I didn't meet, James Woods came very late. But we were at an event at the Reagan Library a little over a month ago. Gary's moving to Tennessee with his foundation. And it was a going away thing, although he was delayed, so he's going to be here a little bit longer. And sitting right in front of me, I mean, I'm sitting on one end of the table, sitting right across from me, was a guy who I thought, man, he really should be more widely exposed in this. I just really admire him, and he's just so little. He should be Tom Cruise. And it was Jim Caviezel. And I didn't know anything about Sound of Freedom. I didn't even know the movie existed until 4 days later. But Gary texted me with the box office for that. And Jim Caviezel is notoriously camera shy, but I figure if we have a good interview with John and Gary, and if I ask Gary to send it to Jim and see if he would do it, that would be great, because he is a really special guy. I saw him I saw him interviewed by Jordan Peterson, and Jordan Peterson was asking about a question about going into dark places, and Jim Caviezel interrupted him. He said, "This is the best question I've ever gotten. This is the best interview I've ever done." And I think that was because that was the only person who's ever talked to him who's really on his side, and I'm on his side, but I can also talk to him about acting in a way, and not just acting, about storytelling and the relationship. I can ask him questions on the level that not even Jordan Peterson can ask on this particular subject, because I know this business. Kid Rock is out there, Ted Nugent. Talked to the guys from Babylon Bee. I actually thought maybe talk to Sarah Palin, for God's sakes. Candace Owen. Bill Shatner would be fun. I think Ted Cruz is very doable. Those are the first names I got. And then from Cameo, these are people that I can pay to do. Most of those other names are friends, and some more of these names on this list are friends as well. For instance, Robert Hayes from Airplane also. He's a great guy. I know him. But I'll just list all these names from Cameo to see if any of them light you guys up. Robert Hayes, James Woods, Mark Metcalf, who did the Twisted Sister things and who was Nita Meyer in Animal House. I want to talk to him about vein popping, like when you're about to have an aneurysm on camera, vein popping over the top kind of thing, how you sell that and how damn funny it is. Dave Foley is available on Cameo from Kids in the Hall. I love that show. I'd like to talk to Dave Foley about how do you make people laugh as the nice guy, because he's the nice guy. He's the one everybody just loved. I'd like to talk to Kevin Pollak, if for no other reason than to hear the Shatner interview. But he's really unusual because he's a stand-up comedian. He's also a superbly good actor. Chris Parnell, who's just completely unknown in terms of, hey, look, it's a celebrity. People recognize him on the street, but he carried so many of those sketches on Saturday Night Live, and I'm just interested in talking to him about the straight man and how that works, and how thankless it can be, and how essential it is, and so on. I know I haven't seen her many years, but I know Victoria Jackson, Ted Nugent. I talked about Air Supply, Casey and the Sunshine Band. I was watching Forrest Gump 2 nights ago with Natasha, and Casey and the Sunshine Band is in Forrest Gump. Well, the music is anyway. As I mentioned on Thursday, you can pay and speak to Joe Cassell from Devo. I'd love to talk to the guy who started Devo. I think that'd be cool. Gene Simmons, I know, and I'm very highly convinced Gene Simmons would do it. He's hilarious. He's such a character. He's really a character. And by the way, somebody was very kind to mention it. Barbara Durant said you'd be good at this interviewing. I want this actually not to be an interview show. It's a discussion show, because it's not going to be me asking a question and then they're going to give me an answer. Then I'm going to ask them another question. It's going to be a conversation from a guy who's written a fair amount of stuff, including 9 movie screenplays, and who's worked with actors, who's a theater major. That's all me, and who knows how this process works. Wayne Newton. These are just names that are available. Mickey Dolenz. That'd be fun to talk to Mickey Dolenz. I mentioned on when I first talked about this on Stratosphere Lounge, I saw this name there and I thought, oh. Then I realized, no, it'd be great. It'd be great for me to talk to Boy George. I can't imagine a person more different than me, than Boy George. But I think he'd be an interesting guy to talk to about shock value, and about the kind of hatred that can generate, this kind of visceral kind of, I'm going to beat him up, and living through that. I mentioned on Thursday, this is the one that sold me on the idea, is Steve Spurrier. That one I'm just dying to do. Jesse Ventura, Brett Favre, Lee Majors, Dr. Drew, Peter Weller. Asking for a certain amount of money, I can interview Buckaroo Banzai. Now, since we're all in this together, let's find out what it would cost to get Peter Weller at his commercial rate. So I'm just going to go to Cameo. I have no idea. .com. I'm going to search. Go ahead. Come on. This is a discovery for me and you in real time. Okay, so you can get Peter Weller to send your message for $10. You can book a personal video for $300. And let me see if that would count as the commercial thing. Business video. Sorry, let me see if I can find this. Whether he's got a business video rate. So oh, okay. So here's how this would work, folks. If we wanted to interview Buckaroo Banzai and RoboCop, and he's a brilliant guy, I've heard, for the low price of $1,250, I can talk to him for half an hour probably, and I get to run that video for 15 days included in the $1,250. And then for 30 days, it's an additional $300. For 45 days, it's an additional $625. And then for 90 days, it's another $1,563. So, I think what will probably happen with these kind of things where I'm paying people is I think we'll just basically say we'd like to get Peter Weller, and this is what he's going to cost, and we'll buy the interview for 3 months, and then maybe we'll retire it for a while and then bring it back out 6 months, or if the money keeps flowing, then we'll just keep it up, we'll just keep it going. So there you go. Back to the list here. Anthony Michael Hall. I'd really like to talk to him too, because if you've seen him, he's like super buff, really tough guy now, macho tough guy. But Anthony Michael Hall played like the ultimate nerd in the John Hughes movies and Breakfast Club. I mean, he was just the dork. How does that work? Is Bruce Campbell on Cameo? I didn't notice him. I was looking. Somebody mentioned him in one of the chats here. John O'Hurley is kind of interesting to me. Britt Eklund, I'd like to talk to her about being a Bond girl and what's going on today. I want to talk to Sally Struthers about how All in the Family changed the country. Joe Pantoliano, Joey Pants, who's on The Sopranos. I was in a movie with him, although he doesn't know it. I was in a movie called The Mean Season as an extra, and I was almost thrown off the set because I was so terrible. Bo Derek, Michael Madsen, that's a scary guy. I'd like to talk to Michael Madsen about scaring the living daylights out of people. Yes, thank you, Marusha. I think so too. You can probably leverage the limited time offer as a pitch to get more members using the principle of scarcity. Exactly right. And if it turns out that some of these videos are just not getting a lot of views, then we'll retire them for a while, and 3 months later we'll crack them out for another week or two. Now's your chance to see the Peter Weller interviews. It's for 2 weeks, and then after that, it's going back in the vault. But ideally, I'd like to be able to be making enough money so we can keep them all going. That's a weird coincidence. Castellan said Paul Dooley. Paul Dooley is on my list. He better be on my... Yes, he is. So just going through the list again. Bo Derek. Let's find out what Bo Derek costs. Because she's a conservative too, by the way. So this is a great adventure. So if we wanted to talk to the woman who was billed as the most beautiful woman in the world, you could certainly make a case for it. She's still looking great, by the way. For Bo Derek, you get 15 days for $2,800, and then if you want her for, I imagine these are additive prices. 90 days is a. I wonder if this is an additional or whether this. I think maybe this is the total cost. It says 90 days, $3,500. So does that mean in addition to the 2,800 days, or does that mean? I don't know. We're going to find out though. So all of this trans stuff, all of this, exploited women stuff, all of this, all of it, the Avon ads with these two overweight, ugly women saying we're going to redefine beauty. It's like, I don't know about that. I'd like to know what the most beautiful woman in the world had to say about that. I really do. Dolph Lundgren, he's interesting. I've heard he's brilliant. John Schneider from Dukes of Hazzard. Why the hell not? Wayne Newton. Strange enough, I think he'd actually be very interesting. Henry Thomas, who was the kid in E.T. and has done other things since then. Cheryl Ladd, that is an actual authentic Charlie's Angel available, although second generation Charlie's Angel. Barry Bostwick, who played Brad on the Rocky Horror Picture Show. Neil McDonough, who was in Band of Brothers in that tremendous Cadillac ad. Tommy Chong. I think it'd be fun to talk to half a Cheech and Chong. And a lot of these people are going to be very different than me and have different politics. It's not about the politics. I'm going to enjoy talking to people who have different views. And the whole point of this thing is, can't we just all kind of get along, We just, okay, so we disagree about that aspect of politics. I'm not going to try and convince you. You're not going to try and convince me. What can we agree on? Dave's not here, man. Me and every other 13-year-old kid in the entire planet at the same time. Malcolm McDowell is very, very high on my list. He is an interesting guy. He is, he's just an interesting guy. I saw Dom Herrera on there, and I just found him, to be hilarious. Colin Mockery from Whose Line Is It Anyway is there. Marta Christian, who was Judy Robinson, is there. Paul Haggis, who wrote, big writer. Bruce Brocksleitner, who I know, used to know quite well, who was Tron, and also Captain Sheridan on Babylon 5. He's a great guy. Nick Searcy's not on Cameo. I don't think he's obviously way too big for that, but I know Nick real well. Vic Mignogna, who did the Star Trek Continues, is available. Paul Dooley, if you've never seen, you probably recognize the face. I got to meet Paul Dooley by accident in a chiropractor's office. I was coming out of the chiropractor. There was a guy sitting on the couch there. I said, "I'm sorry to bother you, sir. Are you Paul Dooley?" He said, "Yes." I said, "Breaking away changed my life." He says, "I hear that a lot." I said, "Changed my life." Yeah, Kevin Sorbo, I know. So we get Kevin. He's got a lot of... Kevin's a great guy, too. Sherry O'Terry is there. I think she's interesting. I thought she was a lot of fun. And then, as I mentioned, just because there's so many weird things there, there's a guy on Cameo named Mike Carter. And Mike Carter was the guy who's the tall alien with the blue skin and the reptile eyes and these things, who stood next to Jabba the Hutt. So Potsy is there, and so is Ralph Malph. And I could get them both together separately, but I think I'd like to get them both together. I think it'd be fun. It'd be fun to talk to Potsy and Ralph Malph about what it was about Happy Days that made that show so transformative. I mean, it was a hit show for practically a decade. And it was same kind of questions I'd like to ask about the Brady Bunch with Barry Williams is that I can't remember a single episode of those shows, but I watched all of them. There was something about the experience that was not plot driven, I would like very much to talk about all that stuff. So Joey Pants is great. He's just a great actor. Obviously, not only Sopranos, but The Matrix, and he'd be fun to talk about for the kind of the crafty trader, kind of the double talking guy who's not what he appears to be. And that's just the names that I saw on there. And of course, high on the list. In fact, probably the first name I would pay for would be Bill Mumy. I want to sit down and talk with Bill Mumy about being Will Robinson. So anyway, that's the plan. And it's not just a plan. It's actually going to happen. I have 3 firm commitments, and I have a very likely from John Voight, which is he'll do it. He'll do it. And then there's the Cameo things, and with any luck, if these things go out there and start doing some business, there might be other people who might do it just because it's a good interview. I had 2 of the people I talked to say, no one's ever asked me about that before. I said, well, that's a good sign, That's a good sign. We could have some fun with that. So we'll see. Michael McKean, I loved him. I loved him. I loved Michael McKean. I thought he was great as Lenny. I loved him in all of the movies with the Christopher Guest movies. I thought he was great in all of those. I liked him as Jiminy Glick's bandmaster, playing that wicked rock and roll harp of his. He's hilarious. And I think the thing to do, as I say, is to concentrate on a specific topic. I think I do not want to do this, we're talking with Bo Derek. So, Bo Derek, what's the most fun you ever had on a movie set? Or what's it like working? No. It's got to be focused. It's got to be about something that relates to the larger society. David Mamet. Gary could get me in front of David Mamet and also could get me in front of John Malkovich. Gary Oldman. I'm going to add those 2 names before I forget. Mamet especially. So, for those long-term viewers and stuff who may be wondering, well, this is all swell and everything, but what about the political stuff? I think this is more important. This idea came to me very quickly and very late. It got me thinking about what it was about the eject stuff, because that wasn't about politics. That was about something bigger than that. We watched these movies, Natasha and I, and people were just, crying our eyes out because of the power of it. And I just don't want to do, there's plenty of political commentary out there. I just think this is much more interesting. And I'm planning on closing the show by saying there's three questions that we do on every interview. One of them is the membership question. The second one is what was Hollywood and what is it now? And the third one is tell me something about America. That would be something I would ask all three of them. Yes, Andrew DeLay says politics is downstream of culture, as a great man said. Yes, he did indeed. So I want to get to the headwaters. I want to get to that. And all of these names that I've mentioned are people who have made an impact on me, and I'm sure on many of you as well. And on some weird level, we've all gone through life together. And it'd be fun to see what's on the other side of that. I think I mentioned with Barry Williams, I think the general theme of that one would be, what's it like to have every single person, even close to your age in this country, know you? Everybody knows you. And not only that, I'm sure everybody is willing to come up and talk to you, Greg. Or I should say, Johnny. And what's that like, Because we all grew up with you. You didn't grow up with us. And this is kind of like a one-way mirror kind of thing, Or is it a two-way mirror? I never get that right. People feel like they know you because we've spent hours and hours and hours with you in your house. And I've had just a shadow of this personally, where sometimes people come up to you and they feel like they know you, because they do. They do know you. So anyway, this is going to be happening, and it's going to be happening soon, within the next week or 10 days, I think, for the first one at the latest. And then we're going to just market the living daylights out of this. And if you want to see the full interview, then you can go to BillWhittle.com for $9.95 a month, and we will provide you with top quality entertainment. Plus, the ironclad rule of the show is you come out of the show feeling better than you did when you went in. That's the only essential element of this. I realized that's the only thing that I insist on. Isafindi says, Bill, I'd have to know if Barack Obama wanted to do your show, would you agree? I absolutely would agree. I would 100% agree. And I would talk to Barack Obama very seriously, not antagonistically, but directly about his different set of values and why does he... What is it about these values that he finds appealing, given the record that they have in the real world? That kind of thing. Yeah, Jesse Ventura's on this. So there's obviously not going to be a shortage of people to do it. And this kind of thing is it's not only fun for me and therefore relatively easy. It's just like I just, as far as the firewalls and afterburners, 400 of them, I don't really know what else to say. And as far as the political commentary, we'll keep doing right angles, obviously, and if something really major hits me, we'll crank out a firewall on it and stuff. But I think this is, I think I've identified where this fight is, and this fight is basically is this death ray they're aiming at us to get us discouraged and divisive and hating each other, hating everybody in the country, hating everybody else, and I'm just not going to be part of that if I can help it. So we'll see. We'll see if we can build some bridges, and a lot of people are on our team. Some of them won't be, um, and uh, and that's okay too. So. And there's a bunch of web celebrities. I'd like to talk to JT on Odin's Men, and I'd like to talk to the offensive tranny, and Doomcock, and Drinker. So we've got a bunch. Let me see here. So there's Terrace again. Says, my dad once asked a famous actor about the time he as a boy next door broke his garage window. I think the actor was happy to talk about something different than showbiz for a change. See, this is it. This is it. And this is what I'm really trying to do. It's hard to really appreciate it, but virtually all the people I've mentioned have been approached to be interviewed scores, dozens of times, hundreds of times. And when they are interviewed, they usually do it as part of a promotion for something they're working on, a movie or something. But they get asked the same three questions for their entire career, They get asked the same three questions for their entire career. And I just happened to catch Jim Caviezel on a short on the way into work today with Jordan Peterson asking him. So there was a lot of concern about Heath Ledger going into this dark place in order to play the Joker, and I was wondering what you had to, and he said, he just cut him off. He said, this is the greatest question anyone's ever asked me. And Jim Caviezel just comes out and says, I'm here on earth to speak truth and to fight evil. And I thought, wow, yeah, me too. You too. So there you go. Trey Parker and Matt Stone, you never know. The plan is to put them on a separate channel. So let me just kind of give you the nuts and bolts on how that would work and why. I am hoping to get. I'm hoping that a lot of conservatives will just come, because this is going to be. It's not going to be about politics, but one of my core contentions is that entertainment is inherently conservative because it's about heroism and individuality. It's about all the things we believe in. But what I don't want to do is, if I put it up on the Bill Whittle channel, I'm already being walked on by this algorithm, and I would prefer to not do that. I'd like to see what happens with something that's a completely different channel and has non-overtly political content, but it will still be about values. It'll be one of the things I talked with Adam Baldwin about when we were talking about doing the show just over the weekend on Saturday. He's been real active in education and watching what's going on in his kids' schools and stuff. And I said, Adam, there's a lot of kids out there, mostly a lot of young boys out there, or young men out there, who really want to be men. They just don't know how. So at what point does somebody like Jane or Animal Mother go past being somebody admirable and into the realm of just a murdering psychopath? Where's that line? And what did you put into the mix to make sure that you didn't cross that line? I think it's clearer in Serenity and Firefly that he's more self-aware. He's more humorous, more arch, I guess. But again, in Full Metal Jacket, looking at the guy, you think he's a villain. He's just a gun-toting villain, just out there just murdering people. And then I realized, well, that's why he's there. He's the only one there in that movie who's serious about the job that he's been given. He's been sent over there to kill the enemy. That's what he's there to do. He's not making wry, ironic comments to, He's not smoking dope, and he's not hiding behind rocks. He's there to do his job, and when it comes time to go in there and charge that sniper's nest, he does it. He's got a pick in his arm, and he's just blasting away. And he's not having, he's not racked by guilt because he ended up killing this person who's trying to kill him. He's authentic. You don't have to like what he does, but people admire him for doing doing what he's there. He's action. Just any kind of people that act, I think, are strongly admired, and that's one of the things I'd like to talk to Sally Struthers about so much. Is what was it like to realize that this guy who was essentially written as the Archie Bunker was written as the foil, he becomes beloved. That must have been a little unusual. I also want to talk to her about Edith too, because I think, looking back on All in the Family, it's like Edith is not pretty, Edith is not clever. Edith can be servile, but what is it about the character that Gene Stapleton brought? And the word I kept coming back with is dignity. Dignity. She's got dignity. And loyalty. Dignity and loyalty. There's a great point there again from Terrace, who's just knocking them out of the park today. It says people like Animal Mother, who are the reason many of our boys come back alive. Yes, absolutely right. Absolutely right. So the general trajectory is to be doing this for the BillWhittle.com stuff, and to be moving the Mace Mattingly stuff along as well, parallel to this. And I've got the Frank Luke script to finish. And the Mace Mattingly thing is not a substitute or an abandonment of the colonies. It's a 2% difficulty dry run for the colonies. What I asked George Takei, it's funny, I thought about that because I'd love to talk to somebody from the original series, and that's pretty much George Takei or Walter Koenig, and I'd take Walter. I'm not a fan of George Takei, although I would certainly talk to him. I'd much rather talk to Bill Shatner, frankly. And here's the thing about talking to Bill Shatner is, like, my pitch to Shatner, I think John knows it. My pitch to Shatner would be, we're going to talk about Captain Kirk, and we're going to talk about him exclusively, but we're not going to talk about him in a way that in a way I don't think you've ever talked about him before. We're going to talk about him as a mythological figure, as part of the cultural mythology of this age, and you, through whatever particular vagaries of chance and luck and decision and talent and all the rest of it, you found yourself in this role, and that role changed the lives of millions and millions of people, including me. I have life-size images of Bill Shatner in 1, 2, 3 places in my office here, and I don't want to talk Star Trek trivia with you. On the contrary, I want to talk about the importance of it. I want to talk about how much it mattered and why. I want to talk about this idea that Kirk is the will, McCoy is emotions, Spock is the logic, and that Kirk is the one in balance, that these three together make a complete, perfect individual. I want to talk about all of that. I'm not particularly interested in talking about things like what was your relationship with Leonard Nimoy. In fact, I'd avoid like the plague. I've just seen it so many times. I've seen it so many times, and I don't want to give them anything they've already gotten. I don't need to hear about his relationship with Leonard Nimoy. He's mentioned it 1,000 times. I'm very interested in Kirk's relationship to Spock, and that's the level I would like to talk about it on. I'm not going to ask you to do Captain Kirk, but I'm asking you to be Captain Kirk and tell me the thought processes that went on, because it worked. There's lots and lots of anecdotal stories about all the fun you guys had and all the rest of it, and I'm happy to have that thrown in. But what I'm really interested in is what what did Kirk think about this and what did Kirk think about that? And you can say, well, that's not an answerable question because he's an actor reading a script, but it's and that's a part of it. The writers and William Shatner together made Captain Kirk. And he's my cultural idol. I mean, he changed my life. And millions of other lives as well. Millions of other lives. And I'm interested in talking to him. See, I think this is kind of where I want to go with all these actors. I believe I can talk with Peter Weller about Buckaroo Banzai and ask him what Buckaroo Banzai was doing or thinking at this moment, because good actors build a character. Bad actors, like me, memorize the lines and then just think of a way to say them. But good actors go much deeper than that. And and I want to know. And I want to know. I'm interested in things. Where did you disagree with Captain Kirk, Bill? You know. I don't know whether you'll do it or not. We'll see. I think if I had enough interviews up there to show them that they're different would help, and frankly, the number of views would help a lot. So, a number of people asked how you're going to promote this. I don't really have a super big plan. We don't have a lot of promotion money right now, although I think that'll change when we start doing these shows. I do know that I can at least start with Gary and at Nerdrotic and Doomcock and Tim Pool and this would be something, you know, I could talk with a bunch of different people about. So we'll see. But I will tell you this. I'm just telling you, I can get genuine emotion and wisdom from these people in a way that no one that I've ever seen can, because I know the pop culture, I know the political background, and I know the acting. I know how it works. I know what transactions are. I know what beat analysis is. I know what objectives are. I know the structure, Stanislavski method structure. I know the whole Uta Hagen subsections of the method and all the rest of it. So I think I think I can get some really cool stuff out of it. For example, Japan 0499 in the Twitch stream says, what would you ask Elon Musk? My first question to Elon Musk would be, Elon, I have a theory and about you. And my theory is the reason you're going to the red planet is to get away from the red tape on the blue planet. That's why I think you're going. I don't think it's so much you're running to a place as you're running away from a place. I think you realize, just like everybody else who's aware of this, that this fossilization of society, where they're holding you up for 2 years to approve paperwork that is doing nothing other than tying you down on purpose, slowing you down. I think that's what's motivating you to go to Mars, is to get away from the paperwork, to get away from just the kudzu, just to get rid of it. And we both know what people can do when you let them do what they love. And we've seen you do it with SpaceX, and we saw Bert Rutan do it with Spaceship One program. We saw the Apollo program. We saw what was going on in Edwards. We know what we're capable of doing when people let us be excellent. But over the course of the last generation or two, society has become bureaucratized, fossilized. We now live in a world where the HR department is more important than the research department or the manufacturing or the marketing even, you know. And this can't last, and I know it, you know it. I think that's why you're going. I think you're going to leave the blue planet to get away from the red tape and go to the red planet where there are blue skies. And that's the first thing I would ask him. And Rough Rider says, Boeing eyes. Yes, exactly. I'd love to talk to him about Boeing. And I'd love to hear what he had to say about Boeing. And I would ask him questions like, so, first of all, I'd tell him how much I admired him for not only admitting his mistakes, but celebrating them with that video of all the different times that they did not land the Falcon 9. I said, when I saw that, I knew you were going to make it to Mars, because that's what you have to do. You can't be afraid of failure. You can't just sit out there like some other rocket company I might mention and, fly once every 4 years. You've got to go out and make the mistakes. And you're making them, and you're making them fast. And I think you could make them much, much faster than you are now, and you're being held back by these weenies. And we all know who we're talking about. I talked to him about the F. Elon Musk, from a California state representative. I talked to him about all this stuff, and I would mostly talk to him about potential. I would talk to him about potential. I never cease to be amazed at what the human potential is for us when we are unleashed. And Apollo, I would send him the Apollo 11 series, see if he'd watch that first, because there's nothing we cannot do. There's really nothing we cannot do, and most of the stuff that we think are like impossible, we've already done. We just did it. We built it. When I was rewatching Apollo 13 last night, I realized people say, "How come we stopped going to the moon?" Apollo 13 was the third trip to the moon, and already they were cutting them. They weren't on national television. That broadcast that Jim Lovell did from Apollo 13 wasn't aired because people were bored with it. We beat the Russians. Why are we going back again? This was the third trip. It wasn't the 19th trip, third trip. And people just said, okay, so now what? All right, so we've seen it before. You guys float around. Okay, maybe we'll watch a little bit of it. What's different? What's the big deal? We've seen it. We've done it. And that's also something interesting to talk to Elon Musk about, and that's the difference between what he's doing and versus what Apollo did. Because if Elon Musk wanted to go to Mars and put a flag in the ground, he could have done that, I think, probably 3-4 years ago. But he's not thinking that way. He's thinking about staying. And but I genuinely, honestly believe that that's why he's going, because that's why I would go. That's why I would go. I would go to get away from all of this ridiculous nonsense. I'm tired of watching the smart guys, smart kids get penalized and held down by the stupid kids. Not by the normal kids, the stupid kids, the greedy kids, the envious kids. I'm tired of being tied down by those people. I really think that's it. Now, who knows? He might surprise me. And Elon Musk does strange things. I've seen him do little interviews. It's possible. It's entirely possible. Just to elaborate on that, it's not just the red tape thing. It's like, I think also there is the natural selection aspect to this. Natural selection's been on vacation on planet here for quite a while now. But you don't get to be old and stupid in space. And that is a cattle prod to not just to invention, but to execution. You can't forget to close the door if you live in a pressurized habitat on Mars. You cannot afford to be stupid, and you cannot afford to be lazy. You don't get to, there's no, the cost of getting you to Mars, the dollar cost of it. And for the foreseeable future, there are not going to be any welfare cases on Mars. Now, there may be people who are injured on Mars and they'll be taken care of, but you're not flying people out there who aren't not only going to do their job, but are the best in the world at doing their job. So I would just I would talk about that, because I don't see anything wrong with that. If you were saying you're excluded because of your nationality, because of your race, because of your sex, because of your sexual orientation, that's not fair. But this is a self-selecting group of people, and I really think that society is becoming so fossilized and top-heavy and bureaucratic that it is like the first stage of a rocket. We need to drop this weight. We need to drop it. I don't want anybody to get hurt. I don't want anybody to starve. I don't want anything to happen bad to them. But we need to drop this empty tank. It's dead weight, and we can't keep carrying it anymore. Some of us got places to go and things to do. So, we'll see. Anyway, that's the plan. So I'm really excited about it. Let's see if we can get through the questions here. As usual, I still got a ton of stuff to do tonight. Where did it go? There it is. All right, let's see what we got at the questions here. If those of you are fine backstage helpers there, if either one of you could post that link again for the membership thing or the donate thing, we could certainly use all the help we could get. Can anybody imagine Bill on the Joe Rogan Experience? I can. I can imagine him on the Joe Rogan Experience. And Joe Rogan I have a lot of respect for, but Joe Rogan I've noticed is sometimes easily taken in. I remember him saying, "Oh, I saw the light shadow change. That's when I realized the moon landing was fake." I'd like to have a friendly discussion about that. Okay, let's log in here and see if we get some questions. I am going to be talking Tropical Storm Hillary, or Hurricane Hillary, will be the topic of my right angle, which we shoot tomorrow. I've told Natasha probably 9 times in the last 3 days, or actually 9 times in the last 24 hours, how disappointed I was in Hurricane Hillary, but she says, don't think that way. And I'm thinking, oh, you're right. But living in California as long as I did, I actually wouldn't mind a little weather, some kind of noise or something, in the sky, something different. It was, by Florida standards, I would say light to moderate rain for 24 hours, and that's about it. But I have excellent footage. Here, look. We'll do this the simple and easy way because we're not going to waste a lot of time on this. But this will be my my right angle for the week. Take a look at this. Shot this last night. Come on now. Where, what am I doing? Okay. You know what that is? That is an awful lot of fresh water. That's fresh water. You know where it's going? It's going into the Pacific. This happens every single rainy season here. It rains, not heavily, but it rains for 2 months, and then it doesn't rain again for 8 months or 9 months, and we have a chronic water shortage, and it costs $100 to water your lawn once, and all of that fresh water just goes right down the so-called LA River and right out into the ocean. And I'm thinking, even with today's standards of construction in California, and after decades and decades and decades of Democrats running the city of Los Angeles, I am thinking even LA and California would be able to find a way to dig some big honkin' cubes in the ground and cover them up, you know, build concrete sided vast reservoirs and just capture the rainfall. Just do that. You know, it's easier to clean water than it is to make it. And there it is. You know, there it is. But, you know, that's what I'm going to be talking about. Look at all this fresh water that we desperately need. Just blowing out to sea, just going. And by the way, I didn't mention this too much to Natasha last night because I didn't want to upset her, but if you fall into the LA River, you're done. Because the sides are completely smooth and extremely high, and that doesn't stop until it gets to the ocean 20 miles away. You go into that channel unless there's somebody waiting for you with a rope at one of these overpasses. You're not getting out again. It is a death trap if you go in there. And Steve was talking about desalination. I've talked about desalination, and we can desalinate things if we had all the energy we need, but it's much easier and much less expensive to simply clean and filter already fresh water than it is to desalinate water. And there's just you saw how much of it there is. Just insane how much water we let go. It's just nuts. It's fresh water. That's the first time I think that really fully hit me. Like, oh, we got to conserve water. You know, limit your showers. Only sprinklers, you know, once every fourth day at nighttime. Okay, we live in a desert. Yeah. But there goes billions of gallons of fresh water. And this happens 6, 7, 8 times a year. You'd think you could put it all in a big honking set of holes and then just pump it out and get you through the year, because if you can just get you through the year, you get new, fresh water, and the desalination is done by that big old nuclear reactor up in the sky. That's what the water cycle is. That's what the water cycle is. Salt water evaporates, salt stays in the ocean, the fresh water goes up into the sky, the salt doesn't go with it, clouds carry it to the ground, it rains or it snows, and behold, fresh water. And then this is what we need to live, and we just watch it just go sailing out to sea. We don't capture any of it, nothing. Nope, just let it go. Bermuda, when I was a kid, when I got there in 1962, Bermuda is a volcanic island in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. There are no rivers, there are no streams, and there are no wells. You know what Bermuda does for water? Bermuda captures all of its rainwater. Every single house in Bermuda has white limestone roofs, and they capture the rainwater, and then they just treat it. And we had this gigantic cistern out back. We just capture the rainwater. In fact, my dad made a big impression on the locals, the people whose island it actually was. We were just visiting, but he made a big impression on them because there was a period there where there was a severe rain shortage, and Bermuda was just out of water, and they were talking about, you know, sending tankers of water to Bermuda. It was a real problem. And my dad's hotel at the time was, I think, one of 2 places on the island. I'm sure there's hundreds of them now, but at the time, his was one of 2. His hotel and some other place had desalination facilities. And he just said, anybody who wants to come here and just open the tap, we'll get you all the fresh water we got. You know, we'll just make it as fast as we can. And we'd be more than happy to just give it to you after how kindly you've treated us and our hotel and our guests who come here from America, and how much, you know, kindness and generosity you show them. This is the very, very least we could do. We're happy to do it. That's what good management is. That's how that works. All right, let's see what we got. Boom, 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 boom. Here we go. So anyway, if you're one of these people who want to see all these interviews, you could go ahead and sign up now if you're not a member already, because this is a coming, and that's a promise. And so you're going to pay sooner or later. Why don't you pay now? That's the way I look at it. I wish I could offer you a discount, but I'm not smart enough to do that. Ian Nolan. Bill, in any of your aircraft hobbying around the Southwest, have you ever run into Ivo Zdarsky? I've heard the name. He's the man who built an ultralight to escape the Soviet Union, and he now sells propellers out in the Ivo Prop. That's where I know the name from. I did not know that he was the guy who escaped from the Soviet Union in an ultralight. Was it the Soviet Union or was it East Germany? But I knew the name Ivo. I couldn't remember it, but I think his company's called Ivo Prop. And I never did meet him, but there are some interesting characters out here, and especially in the canard community, which unfortunately is getting smaller and smaller every year. However, I remember flying out of Camarillo. I flew into Camarillo in my Long Easy, and there were two other Long Easies on the field, and they saw me come in. So we sat out on the runway there at the restaurant right there, and it's right on the runway, and we had lunch, and then they went and got their Long Easies, and I had my Long Easy, and we took off, and we got clear of Camarillo's airspace, then we did some formation flying, and that's really fun. And it, especially if you haven't had, formation training, that was a good stick. So we just started out wide and just kind of walked it in. We didn't get crazy close. But it is a amazing experience flying formation. It's amazing. It's an amazing experience. By the way, I don't have a Long Easy anymore, by the way, Steve. I haven't had it since 2017. One of the reasons I think I was good at formation flying is because I had to do formation flying the first time I soloed an airplane. Because when you're flying a glider, you don't have an engine, you have a tow plane, and you've got to fly behind that tow plane. You've got to fly formation behind the tow plane. And when he starts a turning, you better start a turning too, because if you don't, you're going to start swinging way outside on the outside there, and you're going to start causing enough drag and enough yaw that the tow pilot's going to lose rudder authority, and he'll probably just cut you loose. Yeah. I mean, the first time I ever took a flight lesson, was in a glider, and the tow plane's 100 feet ahead. That's pretty close. 150 feet, I guess. That's pretty close. And I did not get Thunderbird close. But I got close enough. I got close enough so that I was thinking, I always wore a parachute in the Long Easy. I just figured, I can either wear a seat parachute or I can wear a cushion. And I can imagine one scenario anyway where having the parachute probably be better, more useful than having the cushion. So why not? But that's the kind of thing. It's the kind of thing that I think Elon Musk is trying to do, and what Apollo 13 is about. All of this stuff. So one of the people I want to talk to the most is Bert Rutan. Not just about about thinking outside the box, but it is possible to do really cool things safely. Things that would otherwise be dangerous, you can do them safely, but you have to be serious. You don't have to be a genius, but you've got to be serious, and you've got to respect the fact that if you're going to fly formation with a couple other guys, if you F this up badly enough, chances are pretty good that 2 or 3 of you are going to get killed doing it. So don't F it up. I really like that about flying. That's my favorite thing about flying, is that if you are on the ball, it's not like you don't make a mistake. You make plenty of mistakes. It's just when you make a mistake, you realize, my God, I'm making a mistake. I'm not going to make the 4 mistakes that have to happen in a row in order for me to get killed. I've talked about this so many times on Stratosphere Lounge, but just flew into my head again. As far as pilots are concerned, there's 2 different kinds of accidents. There's the accident where you go to the pearly gates and St. Peter says, tough break, kid. And then there's the other one where you go to the pearly gates and St. Peter says, what the hell were you thinking, you idiot? And there are virtually none of the first class of accidents. Virtually every single general aviation accident or fatality is what the hell were you thinking? And I've done a few "what the hell were you thinking" things, looking back on which I regret, but I didn't do them to the degree of foolishness. I did them audaciously, and a fair amount of that courage was not knowing a fair amount of that courage was the fact that I didn't have anybody depending on me. I just had cats, and I had somebody to watch the cats. So I never did anything dangerous intentionally. I made some bad decisions, but I realized I was making those bad decisions. I stopped making the bad decision. I corrected the bad decision, and I never made the same bad decision again. So that's basically how it works. Steve Whoop says thermals that make you gain 6 knots in altitude, or 6K in altitude in a few minutes isn't really a mistake, but air gets thin in a 152. Yes, it does. I've climbed at, I don't know, 1,500, 2,000 feet per minute without an engine. That's a feeling. That's a real feeling. You just sailing along, you know, the Mojave Desert in the summertime, you could throw a rock up and it would just keep going in the air. There's so much lift out there. But you're just flying along and you just feel this little bump. It's all by the seat of your pants. And then now they've got these kind of squealing variometers, you know, just sending useful. And they've got little GPS things that show you, you know, where you think you were lifted. Anyway, okay, I'm not knocking it. I mean, I'm sure if I'd had it, I would have used it, but we didn't have it. So we just fly along, and you just wait for that little bump, and you kind of felt like one wing want to go up more than the other, and you think, okay, I think that thermal's off to the left. You just start a turn to the left, and then you'd feel it again, and then you'd try and isolate where this thing is in space. It's completely invisible. This is called coring a thermal. You just kind of find your way in, and then just kind of figure out where the boundaries of this thing are. And when you were really fully cored in a thermal, 35, 40 degrees, 45 degrees of bank, 40, 45 degrees, and, 4 knots above the stall, and you're just going up. And the altimeter's just doing this. It's just doing that. Although, that's my perspective. From your perspective, it would be doing that. It's amazing. It's really cool. And I also realized that I'd rather have 1 knot of lift when I'm 25 miles away from my home field than 30 knots of lift when I'm right over it. That was made clear to me on my 180-mile flight, 180 miles in an airplane with no engine, and I would have gone further, but it was getting dark, and they said, time to come back now, bring our airplane back. And I said, okay, whatever. Well, this is a simple question. Eli Nord, do you think the Northrop's YF-23 had a higher ceiling than the F-22? I don't know. I know a lot of people say that there was a lot about the F-23 that they thought was superior to the F-22. It was a really cool looking airplane. I think it was significantly bigger than the F-22. I saw the F-23 prototype, either a prototype or the mock-up at in Hawthorne. Where would that have been? Northrop, I guess. And that diamond wing form was really cool, and I think we'll be seeing that again in the future. But speaking of the F-22, I was doing a fair amount of DCS, and then I just couldn't afford the time anymore. Also, I broke my throttle control, the finger lifts on the throttle thing, so I had to put it away for the last 3-4 weeks or so. But I'm still watching a lot of Growling Sidewinder, and the Raptor's just untouchable. I mean, it's untouchable. And that's with them in DCS playing with the AIM 120Cs, the AMRAM Cs, which have a range of 30, 35 miles. The Ds have a range pushing 100 miles, but it's not modeled in the game. I can't understand why. In DCS, they've got the Russian hypersonic missiles, they got the Chinese hypersonic missiles, they got the Meteor missiles from the British, and we're stuck with these AMRAAM-Cs. They've got a third of the range of these other guys. The D is currently in the fleet, and the the AIM 260's got a range of 160 miles, and that's a game changer. So in any event, the 22 is it's a phenomenally. There has never been in the history of aviation, especially military aviation, there has never been that much of a gap between the best fighter in the world and the second best fighter in the world. It is in a league of its own, and when I think about how many we got, that just makes me cry. And when they destroyed the tooling for it. Now, people have said, well, that's because the sixth generation fighter is about to come out, and somebody just mentioned it looks more like the F-23. I believe it's going to. It's going to have that kind of diamond wing shape and no vertical surfaces at all, apparently. But the F-22 it's just there's never been a disparity like the one with the F-22. And if DCS has it as a mod, I don't know why. I actually think DCS has a contractual obligation to not model new aircraft. I believe they are legally withheld from doing that because that's how good the simulation is. So there's no Super Hornet in DCS. There's Legacy Hornet, but the U.S. fleet doesn't have a Legacy Hornet in it. There's no, other than training wings, there are no Legacy Hornets in the fleet anymore. They're all Rhinos now. They're all Superbugs, and it's not in DCS except it's a pretty crummy mod, and the missiles are kind of crummy, and I believe that's because they're not allowed to. I think they can get into trouble, like Defense Department trouble, if they model stuff too accurately, but that doesn't stop the players from doing it. So individuals go out and they mod they take the flight characteristics as best as they can and they, put it in there and off you go. But we'll see. I'm tempted to want to just move into the F-22 so that I don't have to get shot down again. But in any event, oh, by the way, sorry, I missed that. Let me just scroll up a little tiny bit. Thank you very much for the super chat from the Sacred Order of Knightly Valor again. Cool things done safely requires your own skin in the game. Isn't that funny how that works? Yes, I've noticed that. It does. It requires your own skin in the game. It's amazing how much care you will take when it's your ass on the line, which is why it's certainly legendary in terms of procedure, and I believe it's done often, practically done, and I can see the benefit of it. And that is whenever you have your plane annual inspection done, especially if it's a big one, they have to pull the wing off or something like that. When you take the first post-inflection, post-reassembled flight, you should take the A&P, the mechanic, airframe and power plant mechanic. He should be with you in the plane when you go up we've just torn the plane down for its annual inspection. Yep. All right, let's go for a little spin around the pattern, make sure everything's good. Because I want that guy's butt in the plane too. Because I'd like him to have skin in the game when it comes to things like putting on retaining nuts and things of that nature. Ray Juarez. Hey, Bill. Hi, Ray. No question for me today. Just wanted to say thank you for all the work you and the guys do. I've been watching since I was 16, back in 2016. Hooray. Thank you. You guys have helped me make sense of what's going on in the world politically and culturally. Well, that's extremely kind of you, Ray. And I think as you get older, you realize if you just spend enough time listening to something, random probabilities will work to the point where sooner or later you're going to find something useful, and I'm sure that's a story of us at Right Angle, but thank you in all seriousness. I've been very excited for the new animated series. It looks great, and I want to help if I can in any way. Lastly, I know it's damn hard to allow yourself to ask for money, but please understand that there is a ton of people willing and ready to give you money if you need it. I've seen artists get inundated with emergency commissions if they need funds for rent and such. Just ask us. I am inundated I need emergency commissions. Send me money, please. Sincerely, Bill. This is dead serious. Thank you for putting the words in my mouth so that I didn't have to. Yes, if you can help us, we need the help now. We'll be fine in a month. It's getting from here to the next month that is making me age before my time. Thank you for that. That's very kind of you also. A passive way that you can ask to become a member overlay is to get a become a member overlay on a corner of the screen that's always just there and will remind people to help out. That's an excellent idea. It should be something, I've seen a lot of Twitch guys where it's like, push a button to make a super chat donation, push a button, all that stuff. So I got to get that sorted out. But that's an excellent suggestion, so thank you for that. And maybe a little animation that plays when somebody donates. Yes, I've seen other sites do this, and it's a great idea. It doesn't have to be huge or even something you can see while streaming. Good luck, Bill. I would donate more, but my finances are tight as well. Well, Ray, coming from a person who's, I was told there'd be no math about 23, 24, somewhere on there. I'm very, very grateful for that that entire comment and the support and the great advice. So yeah, we're gonna go for it, and I seem to be getting a little bit better at this, so we'll see. Moving on, Chris Taylor, a humble suggestion for the men on the moon to avoid being old cranks. Have them highlight great things young kids are doing and be pissed off at how the government is not giving them the same opportunities to succeed that they had. Could not agree with you more, Chris. This is something that I'm coming to late to the party. I've talked about it before, but yes, this thing became fully gelled in my head when I realized it's not about a guy on the moon saying, "Get off my lawn, you damn kids." Yes, absolutely. We got to be highlighting all this stuff. In fact, we got to be talking about things like Eagle Scouts and the fact that, all of it. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with modern kids. They certainly have the same innate intelligence that boomers or Gen Xers had, probably even higher. It's just that they've been intentionally socialized away from a lot of things by people who don't have their best interests in mind, and they've been victim to the downside of technology while also enjoying the upside. We who were alive and cognizant before the internet and the smart devices and home computers look at this and see all the positives, and then we can see things like social media, and we can compare what life is like after social media then compared to before social media. And we can see some things about it that's really nice, but we see other things about it that we think are just terribly destructive. And this would be a great way to do that. I mentioned for the 9th time today, I guess, we saw Apollo 13 last night. And all of those analog gauges, just these little needles, and they're sticking just a little bit, they're just kind of sticking. And all of the analog gauges, and people say, how could you go to the moon without a computer? It's like, and it was only watching Apollo 13 again when I said, of course we had a computer, you idiot. Of course we had computers. We had flight computers. One of the major plot points in Apollo 13, in terms of the number of crises that they had to solve successively, one of the first ones is, if we shut down the flight computer in the command module, without transferring the data to the lunar module's computer, we're doomed. And so I don't know why when we hear, they couldn't have done it without computers. They had plenty of computers. The math is actually extremely simple. It's not like Photoshop, It's just simple equations. And we had the flight computers to do that, and we had them for 10 years by the time we get there. So I like showing, a little bit of digital display plus some analog display, and the inside of the LEM is going to be my model for the inside of their lander. I just love the inside of the LEM. I love this. At least in Apollo 13, there's little lights dividing the panels. Maybe they dressed it up for the movie. I don't care. And a lot of physical toggle switches and stuff. I think it's important that people know, no, you don't need a computer to land this thing. I'm telling you, 50 years from now, 60 years from now, there are going to be young people saying that it was a fraud and a fake to think that people ever drove their own cars, that it was impossible, clearly impossible, that a human being could control a car without a computer doing all of the braking and the lane controlling and the anticipation. The GPS is impossible. It's just a lie. It was a giant conspiracy, And all the movies that we've ever seen of people driving around by themselves, they're all faked. I guarantee it. Moving back to what he said here. Inflating away the dollar, dumbing down school. This is one thing I've got Mace saying constantly because there's a lot of dynamics going on that are getting clearer in my head. And one of them is that Doug is constantly bitching about this generation, and Mace is constantly telling them they didn't raise themselves, they didn't educate themselves. They're not the ones who told them, that math was a question of how you feel. It's not their fault. You want to get mad at somebody, get mad at the teachers, or get mad at the parents that kept them in school. That allowed this to go on. Here's another Sacred Order of Nightly Valor super chat for 200 yen. Do your astronauts have adult children on Earth? No, they're all bachelors, although I'll get to that in a second. And then there's another one from our friend Taras who says, I've dodged growing up at this time by about 10 or 15 years. On one side of them are people who despise their civilization, and on the other is oppressive cynicism. Well, we're going to get rid of both of those things. Yeah, boomers raised them. That's absolutely right. Boomers and Gen X raised millennials and Gen Z, and got no one to blame but ourselves for that. I just wish that they didn't seem to enjoy being. I'd have much more. Well, it's a circular argument. The damage that's been done to Gen Z is so strong that I resent Gen Z for not having any curiosity. I can understand not having knowledge and stuff. But when I see how astonishingly uncurious so many of them are, it's just like almost like a physical kind of a revulsion. That's really, they've been robbed, and that's as Chris is saying here, that's going to be a theme of this thing. Those kids have been robbed. I want Mace Mattingly to be. I'm not pretending to say it's going to get to this level, but I'd like him to be, for some people anyway, the equivalent of Master Chief. Like a genuine, strong, wise father figure. And when I realized that Mace could be that guy and not be the guy doing all the crankiness, because I want to do some of the crankiness, I have to. And that's part of the 23rd century, the 1966 look at 2023. There's got to be some voice saying, look at everything going to hell. And that's what Doug does. But Mace is an advocate for he's not so much an advocate for Gen Z as he's just an advocate for seeing where the problem is. And also saying, so, what are you going to do? You just going to give up about this? Or are we going to get to work? Because we're used to getting to work. So that's what I'm hoping it will be. Going back to this, talking about how the astronauts could be talking about how this latest two generations have been shafted, inflating away the dollar, dumbing down school, throwing away the rule of law and a high trust society, telling virile young boys that there's something wrong with them for not wanting to sit inside all day being lectured on studies, telling young girls they'll be much happier going to work in an office for the next 50 years, helping build someone else's business and then dying alone instead of working to build your own family and household. Instead of being lunatics complaining about kids today not being able to build civilization, which would alienate them, the crew could complain that the kids today are being screwed by the illegitimate regime that failed to pass down the tools and skills they need for their task and instead ate up our civilizational seed corn. That is a fine, fine sentence right there, civilizational seed corn. I think that would alienate less youth and put the blame on the rent-seeking parasites that deserve it. Couldn't agree more. I'm going to actually do something that I don't think I've ever done before on either Stratosphere Lounge or Stratosphere Studios, but I'm going to just do a quick screen cap of that entire question, and I'm going to keep that on my desktop because that is about as succinct as it could be, and I should put a little tag on this that says, read this, stupid, and that's what I'll do. I'll just put that label on there right now. because this is exactly right. I've had a number of people over the course of talking about Mace Mattingly say that it's not going to appeal to younger people, and it certainly won't appeal to them if all it does is make fun of them. If, on the other hand, look, the idea is constantly evolving, and I think it's constantly getting better. Somewhere a week or 2 weeks ago, I was thinking about the opening of this, and the backstory and the Project Horizon backstory and stuff. And Natasha and I were walking around the neighborhood, and there was a full moon up there, and I just looked up and I just said to myself, it's always 1966 on the moon. I just like the way that sounded. And what do I mean by that? Well, it's 1966 on the moon, meaning, the girls are wearing bikinis and the guys have got their bushy blonde hairdos, and they're surfing down lunar mountains, and they're driving fast cars, and they're playing the Beach Boys, and they're doing serious things. They're building things. They're living on the moon, but they're having a lot of fun doing it, and they are absolutely, completely, 100% free of any guilt about anything. They haven't hurt anybody. They haven't done anything. They've just done nothing but push the envelope and made life better for everybody. And I want young people to see what it's like to have grown up in 1966, when you didn't have to apologize for wanting to ask a girl out, when you didn't have to worry about whether or not the super awesome fast car or that you or the piece of junk that you bought for $300 that you wax twice a week, that driving that car and having fun with your friends is not going to kill the planet, all the rest of this nonsense and lies that they've been fed. And I really, the more I get to it, the more I realize basically the best sell here is to show these guys having fun pretty much all the time, either doing something that they find worthwhile or just plain goofing off and having fun. When I say goofing off, I don't mean goofing off, because goofing off is lying on the couch watching TV, and they could do that, but they don't, because they know it's like starting, just have a little bit of crack cocaine, see if I like it. So, yeah, working on cars, playing football. This is the thing I like about it. See, I didn't really fully realize it until just this second, thanks to your question here, Chris. But it's really weird. But now that, in fact, I hadn't thought about it at all until just now. The cool thing about these guys is that they're going to be outdoors a lot. Isn't that weird? That's what most of their time they're going to spend outdoors, and they live on the frickin' moon. There's no air outdoors. They're going to get into these spacesuits all the time. They're going to watch. One thing I knew early was that they're going to watch TV on the moon, in their chairs, outdoors, because otherwise it's just too easy to watch TV. But yeah, all right, what are you guys doing? Yeah, we'll cook up some steaks, and then I don't know, go out, watch a couple episodes of Gunsmoke, and maybe a Mission Impossible or a Mannix or Hawaii Five-0, something like that. And that's what they'll do. Now, I've had a couple. One of the questions in the stream was, do any of these guys have adult children back home? They don't, but somebody asked the question. I don't know if it was Eric or somebody back in the day. Asked the question: Is Major Mace Mattingly related to Ken Mattingly? And I thought the answer would be for him to say, get asked that question in the mailbag sections of these episodes. Any relation to Ken Mattingly, who flew Apollo 16? And Mace can say, actually, yes, he's my younger second cousin. Now, if you've seen Ken Mattingly lately, I think he's still with us. Even in Apollo 13, Ken Mattingly looked like he was 70. He was old-looking guy. But yeah, you can say he's my younger cousin. And then you get to this whole thing about that's the great unspoken contradiction, is how is it that these guys are in their early to mid 40s and they've been on the moon since 1966? How does that work? Well, that gets back to the Jitlov effect and all the rest of it, but it's the kind of question that's not immediately obvious. By the way, One of the many, many, many great things about Unreal Engine and the fact that it's a one-person puppet show. When I put those characters together in MetaHumans, I build the face. I can do that by morphing faces, like putting 5 or 6 different faces up there and sliding around morphing faces. More often than not, I'll get the general 3 faces that I want. And then I'll just go in and there's little pointers to pull the nose out or up or widen the eyes or raise them or whatever. I can make them blue or hair, do all that stuff. But when you've got the general shape of the face that you want, there is an honest to God slider there. And that slider increases the age. The facial structure is the same, but the skin gets older and it gets spottier, gets more wrinkly, and you can take the exact same. I take Mace's face. I can make him look 100 years old, but more importantly, right now I figure he looks like he's in his late 30s, early 40s. I can make him look like he's in his late 20s, early 30s. I can make him look like a teenager. I can do flashbacks of all these guys, and they will look exactly like the guys that are on the moon now because it is the exact same software. They're just going to de-age the skin, so I don't have to find a look-alike actor. I don't have to do any of that stuff. I just have to go back, make a clone the Mace thing, take his age down from I think it's 54 something. That's not a literal translation, but it's 54 something, and run it down to the teens or something. And there's Mace Mattingly as a young man, and there's Mace Mattingly as an old man, and it's just awesome. It's just really cool. So, looking forward to that. Oh, hey, speaking of which, I did have one thing. It's going to just take a quick second, not long. I was only able to do one real rendering thing in the last couple of days. I've been working real hard on this interview thing, so hang on a second. I did do one test. Here it is. Allow me to download it for your viewing pleasure. So we had done the first take on the interviewer, the woman who's doing the interview, and I mentioned at the time that I just threw that together. I mean, I just threw it together. Took 20 minutes getting that woman ready, and then after that, maybe last week, I guess here, I improved her quite a bit, and I improved the calibration, and she read a lot better. But there were still a lot of problems with her. Mostly, she was really kind of washed out and stuff. And I realized that's because I didn't put any makeup on her. So now I go ahead and I put some makeup on them. So before we go to the next question, while we're sort of talking about Major Mace Mattingly, get your donation button ready there, guys. Here's the latest version. So this is last time I did a 2-panel, the original interviewer and the new interviewer, and now it's a 3-panel where it's the original viewer, the old new interviewer, and the new interviewer. And just looking at the thumbnail here, it looks a lot better. So I'll just play it for you real quick here. Everybody hang on. Don't panic when you see this screen. We're just going to do this for one quick second. So if it goes to black, don't panic. And what are we going to do? That. Okay, I'm back. I didn't want you to panic because I'm looking for this download and I don't see it, but I will find it. So don't go away. Everybody hang loose. There it is. Oh, okay, I see it. Okay, here we go. Ready? Here we go.
Oh, well, today we're very proud and pleased to have a chance to speak with the 4 men that astonished the entire world just a few weeks ago with the official confirmation of Project Horizon and everything that entails. Gentlemen, you may not be fully aware of this, but right now you are likely the 4 most talked about men in the world, and yet we know nothing about you. Now, we know you're pressed for time, so let's just jump right into it. Now, Major Mattingly, I understand you're in command up there. Can you tell us something about yourself? Well, I've never heard anybody refer to you as Robert or Bob or is it everybody refers to you as Mace. Is that some kind of nickname? Would you mind telling us how you got it? Your airplane exploded? Wow. Well, that's quite a story. Now, Grim, is it? Can you tell us about yourself? And how did you get the name Grim? Okay, is there anything you'd like to add to that? All right. And next we have, well, that sounds very impressive. Wonderful. And finally, well, thank you, Gordo. And finally, we have this very tall gentleman. Hello. Well, I'm very well, thank you for asking. And you? So, what can you tell us about yourself, Doug? Okay, well, why don't you start with the basics then? So, Doug, I understand that you're a pilot. No, I'm sorry, I don't understand. What if you have to do something that does require a lot of skill? There's a difference? Well, that escalated quickly. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, there is your exclusive first interview with Project Horizon's Major Mace Mattingly and the last men on the moon. Oh,
Okay, so that looked better. Now, a lot of people are saying it's still got my speech patterns. That's true. Part of the defense for that is that I just raced to get that thing in there, so I read it fast. I didn't make a lot of effort into changing my speech cadence. However, there is a function in the artificially generated voice, and there's a term I'd never heard before, and it's called. There's a setting for it. It's called prosody, and prosody, and basically you can set the prosody from 0 to 10. At 0, the AI is changing my voice, but it's trying to stay as close to the inflections as possible. At a prosody of 10 all the way up, it is trying to make it sound like it is reading from a paper. In other words, it is doing everything it can to make it sound unlike me. And I never really did get a chance to play with that, but I'm going to try that on the next pass because all I have to do is take the existing file, and if I turn the prosody all the way up to 10, like I said, the closer to 0 it is, the more it's trying to match my inflections. Now it can't change where and when the words come because otherwise it loses sync. But the emotional tone, it's quite a noticeable difference. It really is. And I usually set the prosody pretty low because when I try to emphasize things, I want them to translate into the new voice. But I'm very, in fact, probably won't have time to do it tonight because I still got a ton of stuff to do. But I think just by setting that, I'd be curious to see how much of that Billism stuff we can get out of there. So anyway, I had that to show. That was fun. Hey, Chris Goodwin with a super chat saying, I modeled a General Electric nuclear reactor for your space station. I posted a pic under your latest Stratosphere Studio post on Facebook. Well, let's have a look. How awesome is that? Thank you. I want to grab that before I forget. I'll just drag that onto the desktop as well. Hang on 1 second. Let's have a look at that. And I think we'll do one more question after this, and then we'll call it a night. Okay, here we go. All comments. Oh man, get out of here, Chris. This is great, dude. Where have you been all my life? Take a look at this, gang. Make sure this picture came out. You said you modeled this yourself. If we need to talk. Take a look at this. This is the nuclear reactor. Oh, come on. I saw it go in there. I saw you swine. Now let's try it again. That's just epic, man. That's absolutely epic. The control panel is just perfect. It's just analog enough. I mean, it's just freaking perfect. I love the like the aircraft kind of spars down on the bottom there, and it's the right size. And most of all, it's simple. It looks like it's plug and play. That's fantastic, fantastic. What did you model it in? Did you use Blender? And you did the textures. You did all this from scratch because these textures are absolutely freaking perfect. Yeah, we need to talk, man. This is freaking fantastic. I really like it. From scratch in Blender. Okay, hang on a second. Hang on a second. Don't go away. Nobody move. Everybody just hold positions. Don't panic. Hang on. Hang on. I'm working on it. Hang on. I'm old. I'm not good with technology. I don't want to go to the Meta Business Suite. I don't want to go to the Meta Business Suite, you swine. I just want to... How hard is this? Why is this so hard? Hang on. Everybody just be cool. Hang on. One thing I've learned about myself is that if I don't do something right away, it won't get done. What? It's too hard for me. Oh, for the love of God, man. I just want this in. There we go. There we go. Sorry. Don't spend a lot of time on Facebook. I'm very impressed. No permission to add comment. I don't have permission to add a comment on my own. Okay, well, sure, why not? Something went wrong. All right, I'll just sort this out later. But Chris, I love it. I love it, man. And I'm going to set this Facebook page off to the side. I'll sort this out offline. So let me just get rid of this awesome image. Boy, I need some help, man. You have no idea. You have no idea. I have sent 2 messages to Hayes Gray Art, who does great rocket stuff. I haven't heard back from him. So I'm just going to assume that he's either not answering his mail or he doesn't like me. But those rockets still have to be modeled. So, man, that was a very pleasant surprise. And there's just top quality work. That was exactly precisely how I imagined it. So thank you for that. That was really, really fun. All right. Okay, we got a lot more questions than we can get to. Man, it's like Clash of the Titans here. I've got one from Marusha and I've got one from Eric. I'm going to take the one from Marusha. Eric, if you want to refile those, we'll get to them next week. I'm sure I'll have less interesting things to say, as is usually the case. So we'll get to them then. Okay? So I'm just going to do this last one with Marusha and that'll do it. Hey, there's a super chat from our friend Kelladon Sockley. As good as all this is, Bill, I wonder, is this the best use of your time? You strike me as a great storyteller, and well-constructed stories are what we really need, in my humble opinion. Why not hire an animator? For the same reason that I was just doing a big appeal for new members and one-time donations. I have to, on some level, at least where I am now, I have to push this rock a little further up the hill so that it'll start rolling down. What I mean by that is once I get a teaser trailer out, and hopefully we start getting some people signing up for this, then I can hire animators, and what I just saw there was just a great example of it. So I have no desire to be doing anything other than just the story stuff. I spend a lot of time on it. I enjoy it, but it's not as much as I would enjoy being able to say, oh, this is ready? That looks great. I don't have to build this myself? Oh, hot damn. So thank you for that, Calladon, and thank you for the super chat that is helping make that possible. All right, here we go. Final one for the night from Mercia Dark. Hi, Bill. Hope this post finds you well. Yeah, well enough, I guess. Thanks. I recently rewatched The Adventures of Baron Munchausen, made by some of the same people who did Monty Python. Yes, it's an interesting movie. Not sure if you've ever seen it. I have. One of the central themes I took away from the movie is the value of whimsy and how we shouldn't take everything so seriously or literally. Yes, that's a great observation. That's one of the main points of that movie, I think. One of the central themes I took away... I'm sorry. These days, everyone seems to be pushing for ever greater realism in terms of writing, visuals, and world building. In sci-fi and fantasy, we have the convention that you can set your own rules, but you have to stick to whatever rules you set. Almost inevitably, this can lead to plot holes because those rules can't always be reconciled, and it's generally seen as an embarrassment when they exist, since it breaks immersion. Let me argue with you on that one. I've never seen a case where science fiction or fantasy could not reconcile their rules. All I've ever seen is lazy writers who couldn't figure out a way to play by the rules, and I think that's an important distinction. The scene in Last Jedi, where Admiral Holdo engages the hyperdrive, is maybe the best example that I can think of. That's not a question of them not being able to reconcile their own lore. That's a question of just plain being lazy. And actually, there's a much bigger example than that. I don't know how I could have missed it. I actually think you make a strong case that this is the single greatest example of sheer laziness and lack of ability as a writer. And it's a one-word answer. And I think the all-time greatest example of writer laziness can be summed up in the word midichlorians. I think that takes the cake. I don't see there's going to be anybody going to be able to come close to that ever. I think midichlorians is going to own that dubious title for as long as there is a human race. George Lucas is certainly not a writer. Whatever he might be, a writer, he is not. And so George had a problem, and George's problem was he had to tell, really, because he could have shown it, but he's not enough of a writer. So he had to tell the audience that this kid, Anakin, is very strong in the Force. He's really, 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 really strong in the Force. So how do you do that? Well, there's any number of ways you can do that. You're of course limited by the fact that, and by the way, I don't think there's any excuse for this either. I genuinely feel sorry for the kid that was cast as Anakin. I think his life has been living hell. He's been made fun of all the time. I really genuinely feel sorry for him. He seems like a nice guy, but he's a terrible actor, terrible, and the whole movie just completely fails just on that alone. But in his defense, he's a terrible actor because he's got terrible lines. Now, this is pod racing. No, that line makes no sense. Midichlorians. So Lucas needs to show that this kid has got a very, very high force potential. So what did he do? I bet he thought about it for a full 5 minutes. And so he invented what he really needed, what he wanted was he wanted to say, wow, Yoda's an 11, but this guy's a 63. That's basically what he's going for. So he invents, out of thin air, never heard him before, midichlorians, just so that Qui-Gon Jinn can take a little blood sample from this kid and say, wow, his midichlorian readings are off the charts. Well, congratulations, George, you did it. You managed to have one line that says this kid's really strong in the Force, but I think we pretty much already got that from the Shadow poster where there's a little kid with the shadow of Darth Vader on the wall. And so because he was so lazy, he absolutely destroyed the essence of what Star Wars is, the essence of it. Star Wars, and I'm a Star Trek guy. You can't serve two masters. I know there are people that like both, and obviously I like Star Wars, but you're one or the other in your heart of hearts. But Star Wars is basically saying that anybody can train, anybody with the heart, right? If you want it bad enough, the desire, if you have enough desire to go out there and find Yoda and spend years and years and years of training, or weeks as the case may be, or not, but if you really want it, you can, over a period of hard work and over a long period of time, you can develop the powers of the Force. And what that means is it's accessible to anybody. And if you're an audience member and Star Wars hits you the way that Star Trek hit me, then that fundamental belief that you could be a Jedi is just a question of your imagination saying, okay, well, if I worked hard out, if I could find an instructor, if I could find a Jedi master, I would dedicate my life to it. I'd just go live on an island, and I'd serve this guy his breakfast, and I'd scrub his toilet, and I'd do whatever I had to do because he would train me how to be a Jedi, and I want to be a Jedi real bad. Well, along comes the midichlorian thing, and all of a sudden it's like, no, forget it. No, it's not. No. What are you born with? Are you too short to be a fighter pilot? Is your vision not good enough? Well, too bad for you. No starfighter for you. That's what he did with the midichlorians. It became a genetic trait. It wasn't something you earned. It was just a genetic trait. It was just so unbelievably lazy. And when he did it, everybody felt the same way. It's like, what? Oh, well, Harry Potter has the same kind of problem with the idea that you're either a wizard or you're a muggle. Not a huge Harry Potter fan either, but basically that's the problem, right? Which one are you? Everybody wants to be a wizard. Everybody who ever read Harry Potter, and I didn't read it, I saw the movies. Look, I'm not taking anything away from Harry Potter. Harry Potter is excellent. It's just excellent. I just missed that train, and I don't have any regrets about it. But when you see people at Disneyland or Disney World doing the Harry Potter experience, everybody wants to be a wizard. And as I recall, I don't think J.K. Rowling ever... J.K. Rowling made it clear that there are muggles and there are wizards, but the idea that you could be a wizard and not know it is what made Harry Potter work. Because when you're reading Harry Potter, you want to think that you're a wizard, that you have wizard blood in you. It just hasn't been discovered yet. If the Harry Potter books immediately started by locking you out the door of imagination, and said, no, you can't, you can live in this world, but you can't be a wizard because of these reasons that I'm just going to lay down, then the books wouldn't have taken off. They work because Harry Potter doesn't really realize he's a wizard, and somebody has to come and grab him and throw him onto the train, and he realizes, wow, I guess I am special, and that could be you. And the same thing for Luke Skywalker. You're just a kid out there working on a moisture farm, and you like to go and shoot womp rats, and but you could have the ability to be this great hero if you could only get the the teacher. And the midichlorians just completely destroyed that idea. And of course, they were never, ever, ever used again. Oh, see, I'm getting some education here. Hermione was the closest you could get to a Muggle who trains really hard to become a wizard since she was born to Muggle parents. That I didn't know that, but that's an even better example, right? So, through hard work, maybe you get lucky, maybe you get the breaks. Maybe you're come from a family of wizards and you've been wizards forever, and your great grandfather opened Mick Wizards, and you've just been rolling in the family wizardry money forever. But you could get there. That's the point. That's what you could get there. That's what Starfleet is. Starfleet is you could get there if you worked hard enough. You could get there. But midichlorians are like, nope. Well, stick out your arm. We're going to find out whether you're a nope, not even close. Not even close. Thanks for playing. Laziness. And not only laziness, but clearly an indication that George Lucas doesn't understand what he created. And most of what he created had been heavily modified by other people. Lots and lots of people. Originally, what was it? C-3PO was going to be like a used car salesman, and one of them was like a reptile-headed guy, and no, he couldn't do it because of the budget or whatever. And then along comes, was it Ivan Reitman who did the second one? So a lot of people got George back on the rails, and it became a collaborative effort. But it's just so lazy. It's so lazy. And that's so I don't think it's necessarily you will eventually run into conflict because the rules will eventually contradict each other. I think that you just get lazy, and there you go. Back to Baron Munchausen. Han Solo was going to be the green reptile guy. Baron Munchausen doesn't do that. In fact, it seems to do the opposite of that, going a step beyond mere suspension of disbelief and calling overt attention to its own inconsistencies. The characters often do explicitly irrational or anti-realistic things, even by the established rules of their own universe. There's no underlying explanation for why they can do them. The Baron isn't a deity, and he doesn't possess magical items. For instance, the only reason he can do these things is that it's just more interesting and entertaining for the audience, and yet somehow it still seems to work. Yes. You mentioned Eraserhead the other week. It's been years since I saw it, but I seem to recall it being another movie like that. Many comedies and parodies do this as well. I know you've often said you don't like stylized stuff, but I was wondering your thoughts on this. Do you think there's value in breaking away from strict realism, even magical realism, in favor of things that are just pure fun or follow the rule of cool and make no sense when you actually stop and think about them? Specifically, can this work for something that isn't meant to be just a parody? Yes, so let me clarify something first of all. My problem with stylized stuff is not the content, it's the look. I don't like stylized computer animation, and I love cartoons. I don't need to see a photorealistic Wile E. Coyote, and I don't need to see a photorealistic Johnny Quest, although I had thought about doing that as how I would do that if I got handed Johnny Quest. But when it comes to important things, I don't like animated things. I don't like the animated Star Trek. I didn't like the animated Lord of the Rings. And that's just a personal taste. But in terms of the content, like Munchausen, I thought Munchausen was really, really fun. And you're right, you didn't have to explain anything. I forget the name of the guy that Eric Idle played, who could just run incredibly fast and had to carry around a giant, cannonball with him just to stop him from leaping off into wherever. And that's whimsical, and that's also what hang on. What is his name? Terry Gilliam. That's Terry Gilliam. Even going back to the Python animations, that's what made. It's not what made Python. You could add Monty Python without the animations, but it wouldn't have had that. The animations that Terry Gilliam did the interstitial animations in the TV show and eventually did them in the movies as well. Those interstitial animations keep coming back to remind you that nobody's taken this particularly seriously. It's almost like a release valve. It's like, we're going to show you something really ridiculous in a second when John Cleese does his silly walk, but first we're going to show you something really silly in an animation thing to let you know that we're not taking this seriously, obviously. So I don't have any problem with that. I think that serious stuff like Lord of the Rings, which is just, it's obviously just one giant 15-hour movie, is just as good as it gets because they had minimal use of computer graphics. Almost everything was practical. They're never going to equal that movie. I was going to say they'll probably try to make Lord of the Rings again in 50 years, but turns out they tried to make Lord of the Rings again 2 years ago, and we saw what the result of that was. So I completely love the whimsical stuff, and I love the world. It sets its own rules, and it doesn't break them. I really just love that kind of stuff. I'm trying to think of something that's along those lines that I really like. So I'm not like, oh, it must be totally realistic and totally serious. On the contrary, but let me think. Well, the first thing that comes to mind are these comedy sketches from these two sets of comedy teams. Mitchell and Webb I discovered first, and Mitchell and Webb is where we get Vectron from, and Mitchell and Webb had just really clever sketches. And they were just, completely ridiculous, and they were brilliantly funny. They had one I remember most clearly was they had a sketch where Mitchell and Webb were playing two cavemen, and it was orientation day in their little village, and the guy who was the spokesperson for bronze came in to make a presentation telling him how, let me introduce you to the wonders of bronze, Well, I make a stone axe. Well, you might as well just throw it away because it's garbage, because that village that has bronze are going to come over here and kill you all and take your stone axes and throw them away because they're just junk. And then Mitchell's character says, what about the guys who tie handle to the bronze things? Will you still need them? Yeah, well, aces. So Mitchell and Webb are great. And then the second comedy pair that I like much better, and I like Mitchell and Webb a lot, is Harry Enfield and Paul Whitehouse. They're brilliant actors, and Paul Whitehouse, I think, is the funniest man alive. Johnny Depp worked with him, and when he was living in so many years in England, Johnny Depp said he's the best actor he's ever seen. And Enfield is crazy brilliant. So both of those guys take, they take large liberties with the truth. So, yeah, I really like that kind of stuff. And our sketch comedy show, which I need some auto rubbing compound for to fix that DVD. But that sketch comedy show we did back in 93, 94 was just as absurd as things got. We had the Acid Channel. We had a show on the Acid Channel called Look at This. We had the Psychic News Network where you could send reporters out in the field and they would report on things that were about to happen. And my dear friend Ron, who died a few years ago, the most original guy I'd ever known, we wanted to do a Barney sketch. I think I wrote that one. And he went out and bought a bunch of foam rubber and built a Barney dinosaur with the little arms and the big head, and especially that one. Barney didn't have pointy teeth. He had white bands, like almost like perfect dentures, because he had to have a big smile, and if you put teeth in a T-Rex, then he's scary. I hated Barney with every molecule in my body. I absolutely despised that whole thing. I just thought it was horrible. And so we decided we were going to do a Barney sketch. And I think this was my idea. I genuinely do, but I might be wrong about this. A lot of collaboration there. And what I said is, we should do a Barney parody, and the dinosaur eats the kids. And he just snaps and he just eats them. And I think Ron or somebody else said, yeah, we call it Carney. And so we've got the music, the kind of really, doopy little music. Hi, kids. And Ron is in this suit in Florida in the summertime. And he's in this suit and he's doing the mouth thing. And he's put the black velvet on the inside so you can't see him. Hi, kids. And then what was it that set him off? Some kid did something to him, and he just snaps. And he's got this suit, and Ron's kind of a wiry guy, so here's the mouth of the suit. He's doing oh kids, and there's this little girl there, and Barney snaps, and then he opens his mouth and he leans over like this, and as he leans over, the girl disappears into the mouth of this foam dinosaur with these perfectly round denture teeth, and he picks her up like this and then lifts her up and almost does this kind of thing like the way a crocodile eats its prey, and then you do a cutaway of blood splattering on the faces of the kids, and then and he's just covered in blood, and he sees another kid goes running after him. This kid's trying to escape up the slide, and then you hear this scream, and this blood just comes running down, and we just really did it. And there's so this was probably 94, and Jurassic Park had come out in 93, so this was like fresh in everybody's mind. And I think the final moment of that sketch was like Land Shark, a good deal like Land Shark. So if you remember the original Jurassic Park, there was that lizard that had the gills, and it spat venom in the eyes of the guy who was the traitor, idiot. Come on. I forget that. What the hell? Hello. He was in the Jerry Seinfeld show. I can't believe I've lost it. I used to say it all the time. Hello, Jerry. Hello, Newman. Hello, Newman. Yeah. So anyway, so this final kid is like cornered on the monkey bars, and Carney looks like he's about to eat her, but then he stops and he opens his mouth, and he spits venom at this kid, and we used Hershey syrup. And so we just had this girl who was like daughter of one of the people in the company, and she knew what was coming, but she was just standing there. We had this full, those plastic squeeze things of Hershey syrup. We said, "You ready?" And she said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, don't just keep screaming." And she's screaming, and just went like this, and just completely, and she's screaming, and then we cut away from the thing. So, yeah, that's whimsical, and we did a bunch of stuff like that. God, I hated Barney. I just absolutely thought it was just so unbelievably saccharine. Wasn't it Barney's? Yeah, because we parodied this. I love you, you love me. What did we say? We changed it to make it horrifying. But the idea of this foam rubber dinosaur that was specifically designed to be as un-dinosaur as possible, going off on a murder spree, appealed to all of us. And a couple people in the comments said, "It's pretty dark, Bill." It's like, you're damn right it was dark. We were dark guys living in dark times. We were, people who are generally driven to comedy are usually driven to comedy, so they don't go completely mad with grief and fear and anger and all the rest of it. But boy, that was fun. So I love that kind of stuff in its place. It's just not something I have any particular desire to do right now. And I think if I had the means to do all this stuff live action, I'm virtually positive I would prefer to do it that way. But there are some advantages to Unreal. And the things that bother me about Unreal only bother me about Unreal because I'm too old for it. Most people nowadays grew up with computer animation and they've just watched it evolve from there's a big difference between Unreal Tournament and probably Halo. That probably the Halo series is a good indication of just how much better it is. So they're used to seeing computer generated characters. I just wanted it to be. I just want it to look as realistic as I can. That's just my take on things. Marisha Dark is wrapping up his or her own question by composing this lovely lyrics. I love you, you love me. Let's get together and kill Barney with a bang and a boom. We killed him in the war. No more purple dinosaur. Love it. You're hired. You're hired. We're getting all kinds of Barney things here anyway. So I'm getting told to go home. And that'd be great, but I have to edit and post a right angle and a couple other things before I do that. But I think I'm wrapping up this baby. So if those of you who have the magic thingamaboobies there, if you want to put those links up one more time. For those of you who may not have been sold on the original pass, here's your last chance to get in on the fun. And all the things I need are on their way. The gifts that I mentioned and and I found a place to do the cutouts, and so I'm thinking probably a week to 10 days from now should do it. And I got to post last week's Stretch for Studio, so I'll do that now too. And hip hip hooray, there we go. So thanks everybody. Thanks for the great feedback. I'm really, really excited about this new stuff. I think more than anything, really, from just a sheer visceral point of view, I will be very happy if I could get out from underneath this algorithm. I've spent so much time talking about it, watching the views going down, and deep down inside, I kept thinking, all the time I kept thinking, maybe it's not the algorithm, Bill. Maybe you're just getting boring, or you said everything you need to say, or maybe just nobody's interested anymore. But then I heard JT over at Odin's Men saying the exact same thing. It's like, I used to get 1,000 subscribers per video. Now I get 2 or 3. My audience is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And I don't know what to do about it. And I thought, I hear you, brother. The thing, yes, okay, I got the thing too. So anyway, this show is made possible by the members at BillWhittle.com, and that is a club we're hoping to expand in the very near future. And I think when we do some of those highlights from those interviews, I really genuinely think it'll be something a bunch of people be willing to pay $9.95 a month for, because there'll be some real wisdom in there and an actual celebrity shine. And I'm not the slightest bit above letting some of my glory rub off on guys like John Voight or Gary Sinise, who haven't seen a whole lot of action lately, and it's the least I could do to kind of buff up their careers and kind of get them relevant again. So that's the kind of guy I am. Thank you for the kind comments. Thank you as always. I thank you from Natasha, who's almost always watching the show and sees all these comments and is always very, very, very flattered by them as well. So this show's made possible by the members, and we will see you Thursday night on the Stratosphere Lounge, and with any luck, I'll have some more polished mace to go, and then I'll just get that teaser trailer done, which is essentially just a couple simple setups. So had to do a lot of groundwork first, but it's getting to be go time here. Okay, all right, so that'll do it. So thanks again for joining us, and we will see you next time right here on the very own Stratosphere Studio. Hooray!